All right, brand new reaction coming in from the White House as a massive search and rescue effort gets underway in the Pacific. A Navy transport carrying 11 people crashes on its way to the USS Ronald Reagan. 3 people are still missing. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith, live in America's Newsroom this morning.
And
good morning to you.
Good morning, Sandra. How are you? Good morning, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn, in for Bill Hemmer this morning. 8 people, thankfully, they have been rescued, and they are said to be in good condition at this hour. But 3 people remain missing. All this unfolding in the Philippine Sea, where the U.S. has been conducting joint exercises with Japan. Lucas Tomlinson is reporting live from the Pentagon with the very latest. So, Lucas, when, and exactly where did this crash take place?
Well, good morning. The U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet just released a statement saying the crash occurred after taking off from Japan while the plane was flying en route to the USS Ronald Reagan, the aircraft carrier. Now, officials tell me that an engine failure is likely the cause. Of course, the crash is under investigation. Now, helicopters from the USS Ronald Reagan, the aircraft carrier, have recovered 8 of the 11 sailors on board that plane. I'm told all 11 on board the cargo plane were sailors. 3 American sailors remain missing, and the search efforts continue. The 8 people that are recovered are in good condition, are expected to fully recover, and are now on board the carrier. The crash occurred about 575 miles southeast of Okinawa, Japan, in the Philippine Sea Wednesday. The Japanese military is also assisting in the search for the 3 missing sailors. And this crash occurred just 2 days after an Air Force training jet crashed in Texas, killing 1 pilot and injuring another.
Lucas, it's Sandra. What can you tell us about the Navy plane that crashed?
Well, Sandra, this is a Navy C-2 Greyhound. It's a cargo plane and is used to ferry passengers and supplies out to American aircraft carriers at sea. It's a very old aircraft. It's been in service since the late 60s. It's scheduled to be replaced in the next few years by the V-22 Osprey. Now, this latest accident for the Navy's Japan-based 7th Fleet occurred over the summer as 2 separate collisions at sea involved the guided missile destroyers USS Fitzgerald and USS John S. McCain, which killed 17 sailors. This is the latest deadly accident for the 7th Fleet. Over the weekend, another mishap occurred when a U.S. destroyer bumped into a Japanese tugboat after the tugboat lost propulsion, causing minor damage to both ships, but nobody was hurt. Now, recently on Capitol Hill, the head of naval aviation voiced a crisis in his community, saying half of the Navy's 542 F-18 Super Hornets cannot fly right now. And Senator John McCain and the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Mac Thornberry, have said that recent budget cuts have taken a toll. McCain said over 185 service members in the past 3 years have been killed in training accidents, which is 4 times more than were killed in combat over that time. Sandra?
Lucas Tomlinson with an update from the Pentagon. Thank you.
Sandra, meanwhile, these transport planes are known as CODs. They carry supplies, cargo, sailors, and visitors to the aircraft carrier. President Trump has been briefed on the crash this morning. He is staying at Mar-a-Lago for the Thanksgiving holiday. And Kevin Cork is live at Washington to say that the president has tweeted about it. Good morning, Kevin.
Hey, morning to you, Eric. You're right. The Fox News family, the American family, indeed, are all praying for the missing. And that's actually a sentiment that has been reflected in the president's tweet this morning. I want to take you to Twitter and let you know what he is having to say about it already this morning. He said the U.S. Navy is conducting search and rescue following an aircraft crash. We are monitoring the situation. Prayers for all involved. Indeed, again, we all agree with that. 8 people, as you know, have been rescued, Eric, and are in good condition, as you heard Lucas Tomlinson just report, after that transporter plane carrying 11 went down in the Pacific off of Japan. The search continues for the 3 remaining people who are missing. That, by the way, is a C-2A Greyhound aircraft. Routine flight, as you heard Lucas tell you just a second ago there, Eric. We will continue to monitor this situation from our perch over at the White House, and we will keep you up to date should we get any more information from there.
Certainly we are thinking and praying and have them in our thoughts this morning. Meanwhile, you got the race in Alabama. The Roy Moore controversy shows no sign of diminishing. And the president weighed in on that yesterday. Is there a sense that he's going to campaign and go down to Alabama at some point?
Wouldn't that make for a very interesting news cycle, right? But we don't know if that's going to happen, actually. You're right. He did weigh in on that. He had been asked several times, will you go down and campaign for Roy Moore? The president non-committal yesterday. He didn't say he would do it. Then again, he didn't say he wouldn't. He said he would let us all know next week sometime. As you pointed out, the day swirling, of course, after the controversy sort of exploded on the scene, not just in Alabama, but even here in Washington. Just ahead of his family vacation, the president finally weighed in. He didn't endorse Moore, and he certainly didn't have good words for his opponent either.
I can tell you one thing for sure. We don't need a liberal person in there, a Democrat, Jones. He denies it. I mean, if you look at what is really going on and you look at all the things that have happened over the last 48 hours, he totally denies it. He says it didn't happen. And, you know, you have to listen to him also. You're talking about, he said 40 years ago this did not happen.
So you heard him repeat that line. He said it didn't happen. Didn't say he believed it. And again, he didn't say he didn't. By the way, that election, Eric, is coming up on December 12th. We'll be watching the calendars very carefully here in Washington.
And he stressed liberal Democrat versus Roy Moore, but some of the voters getting the message. Thank you, Kevin. Sandra?
Meanwhile, over in Congress, a second woman has come forward with sexual harassment allegations against longtime Democratic Congressman John Conyers. The House Ethics Committee now opening an investigation. Charlie Hurt, opinion editor for the Washington Times. Charlie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Sandra.
I want to start first with the possibility that we could see the president go campaign for Roy Moore.
Yeah, I thought that was a fascinating exchange that the president had with the press yesterday. You know, of course, he could have avoided all of it. Presidents forever have used the whapping of the helicopter blades overhead to not be able to hear what the press is asking. But of course, this guy walks right into the middle of all of it. But you know, he was very careful and very on message. He didn't endorse Roy Moore. But what he did do was he trashed his opponent, and he stayed on message, and he stuck to the script that Roy Moore has denied the allegations, and left open the possibility that, you know, he will do anything he can to keep to keep a good Republican vote in that seat without actually endorsing Roy Moore.
And as far as whether or not he will campaign for Moore, he said, I'll let you know next week. So there could be some big news on that front. We'll keep watching. But when he blasted Moore's opponent, he said, we don't need a liberal person in there, a Democrat, Doug Jones, bad on crime, bad on borders, bad with the military. He went on and was further pressed on the allegations against him. Charlie saying these are allegations that have apparently happened 40 years ago. He says he wouldn't say if it did happen or didn't happen, but he said Roy Moore saying it didn't happen, and we should have to listen to him too. Is this a good strategy for the president to take this up like this?
I think it actually probably is a good strategy, because at the end of the day, you know, nobody in Washington, Mitch McConnell, nobody here has any right to tell Alabama voters who they can vote for. This is entirely up to Alabama voters. And Roy Moore, you know, those of us who actually believe the allegations, you know, we wish that Roy Moore would get out of the race. But you can't force Roy Moore to get out of the race.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, it is up to Alabama voters. And if they decide that they look at the entire picture and decide that this guy is telling the truth and that he did or did not do this, but whatever, they want to send this guy to Washington. We've had a lot of terrible people in the Senate. We didn't sit back and tell Massachusetts you couldn't send Ted Kennedy to Congress. You just sort of, it's up to the states.
But the RNC that has pulled their support, obviously, and we've seen Paul Ryan as well as Mitch McConnell. They're asking him to leave the race, so they have weighed in separately from the president. And real quick, I want to get to Conyers, because this is what he is saying about those settlements. I expressly and vehemently denied the allegations made against me and continue to do so. My office resolved the allegations with an express denial of liability. In order to save all involved from the rigors of protracted litigation, the resolution was not for millions of dollars, but rather for an amount that equated to a reasonable severance payment. I'll remind everybody, those are taxpayer dollars. Yeah. That secret payout. And it did equate to $27,000, not millions of dollars, but an unusual approach for Conyers to take there with that statement.
Yes, indeed. And you're talking about one of the most powerful Democrats in Congress, the ranking Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, and a guy that is a civil rights icon, And you can only imagine the women that have come to work for him, and you read the reports, they have this enormous respect for him. And to have the tables turned on them, it's a special kind of abuse. And we also saw this similarly to the situation involving Bill Clinton. You see his wife turning on them and going after them even before they've reported some of this stuff. It's a really, really icky situation, and then to top it all off, the fact that taxpayers have to pay this, pay for this, it's just disgusting.
And to have that a second person step forward with accusations as well. I can't let you go, Charlie, without talking about LeVar Ball. This is the latest tweet from the president, and this is coming in this morning, by the way. It wasn't the White House, it wasn't the State Department, it wasn't Father LeVar's so-called people on the ground in China that got his son out of a long-term prison sentence. It was me, capital letters. Too bad. LeVar is just a poor man's version of Don King, but without the hair. Just think, LeVar, you could have spent the next 5 to 10 years during Thanksgiving with your son in China, but no NBA contract to support you. But remember, LeVar, shoplifting is not a little thing. It's a really big deal, especially in China. China, ungrateful fool.
This is one of those things that it completely goes under the radar of everyone in Washington and in politics, but it doesn't go under the radar of Donald Trump, and he is like a dog with a bone. He's not going to let this go. And I suspect that people that are, regular people who are watching this are probably on Donald Trump's side.
Fair point. All right. We will keep watching that story for sure. It continues to take bizarre twists and turns. All right. Charlie Hurt, happy Thanksgiving. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Sandra.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard Charlie laugh so much, almost in anything, especially about some of these tweets. Well, we have a lot more and all of this coming up here in America's Newsroom. We will get reaction from Florida Congressman Ron DeSantis. He serves on the House Judiciary Committee alongside Congressman Conyers. Wait to hear what he has to say. Plus, there is this.
This has been a sad week for our nation, for the CBP family, and specifically for the agents of the U.S. Border Patrol.
New questions surrounding the death of a Border Patrol agent. The FBI now saying they are investigating it as a potential assault. We will ask Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton what he knows about this.
And a lot of people, especially women of a certain age, they are bring David Cassidy this morning. The teen heartthrob, how his role in the Partridge Family captivated fans around the world.
I think I was just fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work and do other things. And if you have, if you have the talent and it's in the cards, but I just leave it up to God. And, I'm just lucky.
It's times like these that are the hardest for all the men and women of the U.S. Border Patrol. It is always hard when you lose a young and dedicated agent. The job of the Border Patrol is inherently dangerous. Our men and women deal with a constant presence of the unknown.
The FBI says it's investigating the death of a U.S. border agent as a, quote, potential assault. His partner injured and says he doesn't remember anything that happened that night, leaving a number of questions about what exactly happened. Joining me now, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Thank you for joining us this morning. We do know that they were found in a culvert roughly 30 miles from the southern border. They appeared, it has been described, that they were attacked with rocks. So how is this investigation playing out right now?
My guess is it's challenging, given that they were left there alone, to find actually who was involved in the assault, which is why they're offering rewards to find that information out. Until they find somebody that was actually there, it's going to be difficult to know exactly what happened.
And what do we know about the Border Patrol agent that did survive this? Our thoughts are certainly with the Border Patrol agent who lost his life. He leaves behind a young son. The other agent is surviving right now. He's in the hospital, but we're told he is saying he doesn't remember anything from that night.
Again, very difficult to figure out what happened if he doesn't remember. Hopefully, over time, some of that will come back to him. And I'm sure that's what they're hoping for.
Do we know if any weapons were pulled, if any shots were fired by the agents?
At this point, I don't think that happened, but we don't know for sure. And I don't think we're going to know until we either find somebody at the scene or this agent that can't remember remembers something about what actually happened.
And we know the agent who died, he had traumatic head injuries, a number of broken bones he suffered during that attack. You keep mentioning this award that is being given for any information regarding this attack. Governor Greg Abbott has made it clear. I don't know what the amount is at right now. Do you know off the top of your head?
My understanding is the feds have offered $25,000 and the governor's offered $20,000. We'll see if that goes up, but at least right now, that's what's out there.
Do you know of any phone calls coming in?
I have not heard of any, but this is certainly a way to incentivize this. And obviously, again, if there's nobody at the scene, this is the only way we can get information, is if we can have somebody call in and let us know what happened.
Have you come up with any theories in your mind as to what happened that night?
I mean, I'm pretty sure. I mean, if you think about the fact that one person died, the other person was severely injured, they were claiming, the AP, I guess, was claiming that they fell off a bridge 8 or 9 feet and that it was into the sand. I would be shocked if that's what happened. I'm pretty certain we had an assault by probably drug smugglers or the like.
You know, the president has used this as an opportunity to bring up the border wall. Is that something that you believe should happen?
Absolutely. This is further indication. This is why the people in my state are so concerned about that. We are very concerned about border security, whether it's the wall or whether it's greater technology or more border agents. This is the type of issue that we're all concerned about along the border.
All right, Ken Paxton, we really thank you for coming on a holiday week, an important story that we will continue to see more details as they emerge, and this investigation is ongoing. Ken Paxton, happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, you too. Thank you for having me on.
And our thoughts, of course, are with those agents and their families. Uber, meanwhile, have you heard about this? Coming under fire. Uber accused of actually paying off hackers and covering up a data breach that they say targeted 50 million users and 7 million drivers. We'll have the details straight ahead. Plus, the New York City terrorist suspect, he's been indicted, 22 counts, including murder and terrorism. What we are now learning about Sayfullo Saipov.
It appears that Mr. Saipov had been planning this for a number of weeks. He did this in the name of ISIS, and along with the other items recovered at the scene was some notes that further indicate that.
U.S. officials now saying the violence against Rohingya Muslims in Burma constitutes ethnic cleansing. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson issuing a statement saying the U.S. could consider target sanctions against those responsible. Hundreds of thousands of Rohingya are believed to have fled the country since August and crossed over the border into Bangladesh.
Well, the New York City terrorist attack suspect, Sayfullo Saipov, well, he's been indicted. He now faces 22 criminal counts, including murder and terror charges for that alleged radical Islamic terrorist attack last month carried out, say, prosecutors in the name of ISIS. Saipov is now charged with driving over that bike lane in downtown New York City near the World Trade Center. You may recall it happened on Halloween afternoon, killing 8 people, injuring 12 others, and it may have been in the plot again elsewhere, because CIA officer, former officer Buck Sexton joins us. Buck, this was right out of the ISIS handbook, say authorities, and now there's another potential plot broken up in Berlin using a truck or a car just like this?
Based on what German authorities are telling us right now, it seems as though there was an effort underway with possible ISIS members, so not ISIS-inspired individuals, to engage in what would have been largely a repeat of a plot that was brought to fruition last year, killed 12 people in a Christmas market in Germany. One individual used a truck and then died later on in a shootout with police in Germany. It looks like that was, once again, the method of operation here the terrorists were choosing. They were surveilling targets, including specifically Christmas markets. It is clearly a time, especially when you add all of the chatter that's out there. There have been discussions, or not discussions, posters and other propaganda out there about possibly attacking the Vatican, and the Pope has come into this, and other high-profile targets and officials. There's certainly an elevated threat right now, as we see, while the charges are being leveled here against Saipov.
So we have Nice, we have London, we have Berlin. We had another case here in the United States using a truck aimed at people, aimed at, in this case, Christians during the Christmas holiday specifically.
The Islamic State's online magazine Rumiyah singled out the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which is going to happen right near where we are here in New York City, as what they called, quote, an excellent target. Now, look, NYPD, various law enforcement and intelligence agencies in this country and our partners overseas, well aware of the difference between chatter, the boasting that you see online, and an imminent actionable threat. They're taking a lot of precautions, and they're certainly upping the precautions against specifically vehicle attacks, because this has become the go-to method for terrorists, particularly with limited training, who want a high likelihood of bringing about casualties from an attack.
And it seems so simple and easy. Saipov, for example, all he did was rent that truck allegedly at the Home Depot, drive it down that one area. You would presume that there'd be sand trucks through all the areas for the Thanksgiving Day Parade. But what do you do with a guy like Saipov, who court papers said was proud of this, boasted about this, wanted to hang the ISIS flag in his hospital room, and is inspired by ISIS and not a member?
It looks like he's just going to be, it's going to be determined whether he is a death penalty case or spends the rest of his life in prison. In terms of any intelligence or information that could be gleaned from him, I know there was initially discussion about maybe we should send Saipov to Gitmo, or we should hold him as an enemy combatant somewhere. But what would be the purpose of that? The federal courts are open, they are functioning, and they have handled very high-profile terrorist cases in the past. Unless he had some connectivity to foreign jihadists, unless there was an extremist organization overseas that he was at least in contact with in a meaningful way.
Yeah, they haven't found that yet.
But they haven't found that.
So the day after his arrest, June Kim, I asked the U.S. attorney about this. Here's what he said.
As I understand it, the determination of someone being declared an enemy combatant is one that gets made way above my pay grade.
His pay grade means the president, who originally said he should get the death penalty and he should go to Gitmo.
Well, the president is the one who could make the determination as the commander-in-chief about it's unlawful enemy combatant status, right? If this was actually an enemy combatant, then the Geneva Convention would apply, and all this would fall into a category outside of that because he wasn't in uniform, not fighting for a nation state. But the advantage of it, well, let's really look at what this would give us. The advantage of holding him in that status doesn't seem very apparent right now. There's no, as I said, no additional intelligence that would be gleaned from him that we're aware of. And we have tried very serious, the First World Trade Center bombing, very serious cases in this country involving high-level jihadists. So I think it's just a question now of does he get life in prison or the death penalty?
And the threat from these trucks sadly continues.
It absolutely does.
Good to see you. And happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Sandra?
We are remembering the 70s heartthrob David Cassidy this morning. He passed away yesterday at the age of 67. We'll take a look back at his life and career.
And America's longest-serving congressman, we've heard about this, he's facing a second allegation of sexual harassment. And now his colleagues on the Hill have begun their investigation. Coming up, we'll ask Congressman Ron DeSantis about all of this that's developing.
Plus, we know holiday travel can be, well, a bit of a headache. But take a look at this scene. Millions of drivers trapped in holiday traffic.
There is an intense and desperate search right now ongoing in the Pacific, a rescue effort after a Navy transport plane like this one, carrying 11 people, crashed into the Philippine Sea. Crews have so far rescued 8 of those passengers, though 3 at this hour are still missing. We're hearing that all of the 11 on board, they were sailors. They were heading to the USS Ronald Reagan. That type of plane is called a COD. It carries passengers and cargo and materiel to the aircraft carriers. This just happens to be the latest accident you may know for the Navy 7th Fleet. A pair of collisions at sea over the summer took the lives of 17 sailors.
The House Ethics Committee launching an investigation into veteran Democratic Congressman John Conyers, as a second former staffer is now speaking out, now accusing him of daily sexual harassment. Joining me now, Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis. He serves on the House Judiciary Committee with Congressman Conyers. Fair to say this is someone you have worked with in the past. What do you think of these allegations?
Well, I'll tell you, Sandra, it's troubling. I mean, obviously, we've had this news about secret settlements that have been done. There is this slush fund where tax dollars are actually covering for member misconduct. And in Congressman Conyers' case, what he did is actually didn't come out of that slush fund. He used his office budget that we all get to pay somebody who had accused, who was a complainant of sexual harassment, effectively a $25,000 to camouflage it to look like that individual is just getting paid as a normal employee. So there are a lot of really troubling issues, both with the Conyers issue and then in the broader question of how are our tax dollars being used to cover for private misconduct of congressmen and staffers.
Because it's important to point out that was a $27,000 payout. Those are taxpayer funds. You plan to address this by introducing legislation. You are just announcing this in this hour, unsealing congressional harassment records you're calling on to prohibit taxpayer funds from being used to cover for congressional misconduct. Congressman, you must be doing this because you see this as is this a systemic problem? Is this bigger than we even know of at this point?
You know, I'm not sure, but I think that's one of the reasons why we have to unseal these records. And the American people need to know, why is their money being paid out for these settlements? And it's not all sexual harassment. There are other claims that are made under this system. So we need the transparency for that. I think that'll be very good. And then we have to bar tax dollars going to pay for effectively private misconduct of members and staff.
I mean, people hear this and
the taxpayer should not be on the hook for that.
And they are. And here's what Conyers is saying about this. And I really do think it's important to get this in here because this is his side of the story. He says he expressly and vehemently denied the allegations made against me and continue to do so. My office resolved the allegations with an express denial of liability in order to save all involved from the rigors of protracted litigation. The resolution was not for millions of dollars, but rather for an amount that equated to a reasonable severance payment. So these are taxpayer-funded settlements under the guise of severance was the word that he used in his official statement here, Congressman.
Well, and he did even different. He did not use the money out of the slush fund. He used his office money, and then that was categorized as basically payment to an employee. So if a taxpayer was looking at his office expenses, it would seem like this is just somebody who was employed there. So that was camouflaged. It was not designated as any type of severance or settlement payment. So I think we have to address that as well. I don't think members should be able to camouflage payments with their office budget. So there are two different pots of money at stake here. The slush fund created in '95, but then the average office budget that every member of Congress has. You need transparency in both of those.
What is the conversation on Capitol Hill? I mean, obviously this morning, a lot of people away for Thanksgiving, a holiday break here. But this has been a cloud over Capitol Hill. The president has recently addressed this morning, Politico, saying the allegations against Conyers are rocking House Democrats. What is the conversation? What's it going to be like when everybody returns from the holiday?
Well, the thing that I notice, I mean, Congressman Conyers has been in Congress for over 50 years, and I just think it's human nature. Look, he's going to defend himself on this. I'll give him the opportunity to do that. But I just think when people are effectively bulletproof and they're entrenched in power, that they're much more likely to do things that are not on the up and up. And I think it's a walking advertisement for term limits for members of Congress.
And if I could, we only have a few seconds left. Just get your take on the things, the happenings with Roy Moore.
Well, look, I mean, I don't know about the allegations. Obviously, the Alabama voters just going to have to vet that and then make a determination one way or another. And I think that there are different people can come to different conclusions on some of this stuff. But obviously, the allegations themselves are very troubling.
Okay, Congressman Ron DeSantis, thanks for coming on. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Oh, remember that song, I Think I Love You, the smash hit that set David Cassidy's music career in motion. You know, it first debuted in the 1970s sitcom The Partridge Family, in which he was a star. He made his name for himself playing the elder son of that touring family, Keith Partridge. Well, sadly, Cassidy passed away yesterday in a Florida hospital. Earlier this year, he announced that he was diagnosed with dementia. He was 67 years old. Will Carr takes a look back at the life and career of David Cassidy.
Recording.
Well, remember,
you will be missed.
I know. You know, you begin to feel age, not just at other people's kids, but when this happens, and you remember Susan Day and Shirley Jones and the people that we lose, like Florence Henderson and Mike Connors, and now David Cassidy, whose poster was up on a lot of young ladies' bedrooms when they were young.
It was a nice look back at his life. All right, moving on. Incredible new video coming in on that North Korean soldier who defected to South Korea earlier this month. Here is the desperate moment where he crashed his Jeep and decided to make a run for it. Coming up, we'll show the rest plus the story behind this video.
And Roy Moore, well, he remains defiant this morning, refusing to drop out of the Alabama Senate race as those sexual misconduct allegations continue. What the president is now saying about those claims and Moore's Democratic opponent.